I'm Tim, he's Brian, this is Watch You Want, and thanks for logging on. Take it away, my man.
Hi guys, today is the Wednesday Windup, and this is a new show that we're going to be doing where I am the host. Tim is my very first guest. Hi, Tim. So Tim, of course, will be ever present, but I actually curated the script today, so I hope you guys enjoy. Tim definitely helped and gave his insight, but if you guys have any critiques, please don't hesitate to comment in the chat or send an email with ideas or things that you would want to see improved or in future episodes.
Absolutely, and as we roll out into the testing zone, I think we should also mention that these are professional drivers on a closed course. Do not attempt at home. But we also have a little reminder. Our Govberg Watchbox app is the best way to get the news, reviews, and information you can use, as well as our videos and our articles. You can also create a curated stream of articles from your favorite news and magazine sites, as well as use our real-time pricing engine to get the value for watches you own, your collection in aggregate, or even to track the value of watches you don't own. On govbergwatches.com, check out the app page in the header, available for iOS and Android. Brian, let's do some wrist shots.
Okay, so before we do that, just help me quickly log in here to where we see our video here, so that way I am not going crazy and looking over here.
It's more fun when we can see what you're saying.
Exactly, because today we're going to be having like a pseudo roundtable discussion where we're definitely going to be fielding questions from the crowd.
This works better.
There we go.
All right, now that that's fixed, we go from digital and back to analog.
Awesome.
Brian?
So starting with the wrist shots, I've got here a 5980/1A blue dial, the original iteration of the watch. This is a watch that I've had for a long time. It is pretty much beat up. I actually just found some white specks under the crystal, so I don't think that that's good. But we will definitely get that checked out on tomorrow morning. Date's not corrected because I never carry a pusher, and I don't know why there would ever be a time-only chronograph with a date that would require a pusher, but that's Patek for you. Yeah, so pretty beat up and just a watch I love to wear.
If you're wondering about that pusher on the 5980, it's because it uses the same base 28/520 movement from the 5960 annual calendar, and that pusher is the last vestige of the annual calendar movement stripped down to create the Nautilus chronograph. This is what I'm wearing today. My Jlc Grand Memovox, a watch I love, like Brian, white metal with a blue dial. I love the combination of the perpetual calendar, which I can use all the time, with the alarm, which is actually my favorite complication. And it's a fun watch to wear because it's got a great weight to it. And this was the first watch I bought as an employee of Watch You Want and Govberg, so it has sentimental value.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Beautiful piece.
And it's a perpetual calendar, so I had no choice but to set the date correctly.
You're better than I am. Okay, so for this or that, these were two watches that I think have come under a lot of discussion of late, and it is two pieces that there was a lot of fanfare over when they made the announcement of the switch, and then even when they came out with the first one. So the this or that for today is the Sea-Dweller 4000 by Rolex, or the new Sea-Dweller 43mm, obviously by Rolex as well. So Tim, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that the one to buy as an investment, hands down, is the 116600. There's no question the old Sea-Dweller 40 had a very short life, about 2.5 years in production. It was a steel Rolex sports watch that was rarely sold and even less rarely seen. So for me, that's the one you buy for collector reasons. I will say this though, the 43, in my opinion, it's the 126600, has more emotion to it than I expected. First of all, the proportion of lug to bracelet's a lot better than the deep sea, which is what a lot of people worry about when they hear Sea-Dweller 43. Only 1 millimeter away from the ungainly deep sea. This watch doesn't read that way on the wrist. The return of the red for the 50th anniversary of the Sea-Dweller.
Homage to the red Sea-Dwellers.
I think that was a nice touch. I would have loved to see it say Submariner 4000 on there. That would have been a great homage. But as it is, it does tug at my heartstrings. So I'm not going to say that the heart and the mind automatically jumps for the 40mm. There's no question that watch is cleaner, that watch is more collectible, that's probably the purist's choice. I will say, though, that if you love the romance of the old red Sea-Dwellers, you like the proportions of the new watch, and even if you're a movement snob, the new watch does feature a big movement upgrade over the old one, with Rolex's new 3235. 70-hour power reserve, new chronergy escapement, upgraded barrel and mainspring. Because I have a small wrist, it's got to be the Sea-Dweller 40 for me. But that's a purely practical decision. The only thing I really don't like about the new watch is the Cyclops eye. And you know what? I have a good set of eyes. I would imagine that if your eyes are, I don't know, perhaps ebbing, you might appreciate the Cyclops eye. It's an adventurous choice. Rolex did not take the easy way out there. I knew that would be contentious. Rolex courted controversy, and that I kind of admire. So I don't totally hate the Cyclops.
And I agree with you on all your points. I would say my choice as well would be the Sea-Dweller 4000. A, because of the size, 40 millimeter fits me much better than a 43. More of a purist at heart in that I really like the way that the watch looked in the past, and I thought that the upgrades that they made to the most recent variation were what were really called for on the latest version of the watch. Surprised when they discontinued it after only a year and a half. It's not very often that Rolex will make a change like that, which is why I think that the price is, shot up. They're now selling pre-owned at full list, and they're, you're starting to see more of them come out of the woodwork because people are starting to realize, oh wait, like this watch is bringing good money again. I think that people, or I should say not people, but Rolex probably saw some sluggish sales, which is why they made the switch. I think that there was a lot of outcry from the community in that what was really wanted was not a 40 millimeter Sea-Dweller, but a larger sub. And people wanted something that was in between the Submariner and the larger Deep Sea. And the Sea-Dweller 4000 just didn't fill that void. So they had to come up with something. It wasn't going to be a new model. They weren't going to make the date just that much bigger. So the only option available to them was to take the Sea-Dweller 4000, make it a little bit larger so you've got that in-between size. They added the Cyclops because, again, that's not what purists want, but that's probably what the consumer at large wanted. And they went with that route. They made a slightly larger watch. Watch is beautiful, fits great, it's well proportioned. But for me, the Sea-Dweller 4000 all day.
I'll throw this out there. The Sea-Dweller 4000 is probably best compared not to a watch, but to a car. If you've seen the price of 575 Maranellos and 599s shoot up when they're manual transmission, you have a great example of a car that sells for its weight in gold on the secondary market that no one wanted to buy when it's new. Ferrari has phased out manual transmissions because it can't sell them to the new Ferrari buyer. As soon as they get onto the pre-owned market, they explode in value. The few that were made, the trickle of gated shifters from the 2000s, those are now the premium, and Ferrari can't explain why they can't sell a new Ferrari with a manual transmission, and yet collectors get into bidding wars to buy these things pre-owned. That's the Sea-Dweller 4000 to me.
And I mean, to answer a question from Purple Haze, I definitely think that, I wouldn't necessarily say that they're competing with AP, but I definitely think that there was a void in their collection for somebody that wanted something bigger than a sub. And your next notch up was either a Yacht Master 2, which is very large, or a Deep Sea, which is still very large. And for somebody that wanted something larger than a 40 in a stainless steel ceramic bezel type of case, there wasn't many options, and this is that in-between point where they're hoping to capture more of the market.
At this point, I think you can look at that Sea-Dweller 4000, the 40 millimeter, as the closest thing you'll find to a watch you can buy and own and use for free. Because even in daily wear, I believe if you hang on to this watch, 5 years down the line, not 10, not 20, you'll be able to sell it for a lot more than you bought it for. Buy it, own it, enjoy it, and 5 years from now, it'll just be coming out from under its warranty.
Yeah, exactly. So
if you can't get the Nautilus 5711, consider this.
Both are good. Okay, moving on. So next discussion topic is something that we've actually been talking a lot in the industry, and I think that there's been a lot of discussion of it as well behind closed doors amongst the brands on, is customization the future of the watch business? Obviously not the entire future, but how big of a part is it going to play? Because what we're seeing now more than ever is that the technology to customize to customize watches is getting better and better, where people can customize watches as good of quality as the brands can do themselves. So in the past, you know, when you would see like the first people that were PVDing watches, they would scratch, it would come off, it wasn't done right, there'd be discoloration. But now you've got people that, I mean, PVD is the smallest thing on the list of what they can do. They can change the bezels, they can change the dials, they can change the lume, they can inscribe, they can engrave. So, and it's done at the quality of the brands. So now you've got that ability and the pricing is coming down. So you're gonna see over time, people have the option to customize watches. And what are the brands going to do to, you know, either embrace this or reject this, and how is this gonna affect ultimately the resale value of these pieces? And, you know, the first point that we can talk about and, you know, field questions about is Zenith bringing on Bamford as, what was the title that he gave Bamford?
Well, quite honestly, they're going to be the Bamford collection from Zenith.
Correct. But I think he's like the artist, the in-house artist or customizer. I think it's like in-house customizer.
Yeah, there's some sort of title. The important thing though is that Bamford announced going forward, it's not just going to be for Zenith. They're only going to work with companies that sanction them officially. So
Correct.
They made their name as a high-end customizer of Rolex, and they were one of the few PVD shops that would guarantee that they could restore a PVD finish. Bamford, it's worth mentioning, guys, is kind of a super tiny division of an enormous billion-pound company that mostly makes military equipment and big trucks. Mm-hmm. So that's an idea of the scope of their resources behind this.
Mm-hmm. So, and what you have now with Zenith sort of giving the OK stamp on the watch is now people will be able to customize the watches and make, you know, let's call it one-offs. And what's interesting, or what we find interesting, is that, you know, you have on a Monday, if Bamford was messing around with Zeniths, that the Zeniths were, you know, worth nothing after the fact, or they were worth whatever premium somebody that really liked Bamford was willing to pay. And on Tuesday, they make the announcement, and now you have all these watches, and now because it's been okayed by the brand, the same watch now is not only probably going to sell for retail, but could be worth above that because you're going to have all these people that now want the watches. So it shows you that people want one-off watches or one-of-a-kind watches that are customized to their needs or their colors that they like or their branding or their company or whatever it is. You know, they almost just want an okay by the brand. And over time, it'll be interesting to see if even that erodes, that they don't need the okay.
I think this is a bigger deal for the customizers themselves than for the brands, because we've seen through history, and the best example of this is the Vacheron Constantin Quai de Lille, a watch that you could customize to the nth degree when it first came out. The watch actually became a more successful model line when they said, you know what, we're just going to focus on a few focused, well-developed design concepts and get rid of the whole customization. But for Bamford, it's a game changer. For them to be factory sanctioned, that legitimizes everything they've done. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, a great example is, you know, past automotive customization schemes, like where Pano's Auto, I've got their logo behind me on the license plate I bought at the 2002 Washington Grand Prix. But, you know, they would get parts from Ford and Visteon, and they would get them as full assemblies, engines with wiring looms and emissions equipment, full bulkheads for Ford Mustangs so they could build the basis for their cars. It didn't change the image of Ford or much. I mean, it was a rounding error in Ford's profits, but for Pano's, or for Celine, which was able to get a stripped-down Mustang body in white from Ford to then build a custom car, that was huge. So I think for Bamford, this is going to be a game changer.
And you know that they're just going to now move throughout the LVMH group and do it for Bulgari, possibly do it for TAG. They've already done it for Zenith. So
maybe. I'm not 100% sure.
There'll be a black Serpenti at some point.
I think there is a black Serpenti, and I think I reviewed it on the Govberg channel. But what I think is that this is going to change the game for the customizers. Zenith, in my opinion, is not going to gain a whole lot from that, and here's why. I think first and foremost, having a watch that's well-designed and scarce is the key to having a strong brand image. And people would rather fight over a standardized watch that's beautiful and hard to get, great example is the 5711, than battle to be in line for customs. So I don't think it's going to make a big business difference for Zenith. I don't think it's hugely scalable too, because Bamford has limited capacity, and even an expansion would still see it fairly limited. Zenith makes, you know, 15 to 20,000 watches a year. That's way too much for customization to get too deep into the lineup.
Well, I mean, it's more to the point of, over time, right now, let's call it maybe 300 to 400 watches that they're going to make for this. But, now at some point they'll roll out the ability where if you want, a particular El Primero chronograph or a Stratos or something like that, and you want it a special one for you and your 5 friends, and you want to be a little bit different, and it's not about necessarily having a watch that's going to hold its value over time that you're going to have for 10 years. You just want something for you and your 5 friends that's a little bit different, and you can pick the strap and the bezel and the dial and the engraving on the back. I think that you're going to have people that are going to want to make a 5 off, and then other people that want a 1 off, and you're going to have the factory setting aside resources for people that want to be different.
Definitely true. I don't know if it'll ever have widespread appeal, just because when you buy a customized watch, if it's truly customized the way they're talking about millions of permutations with the Bamford setup. At first they're doing 42 watches. Mm-hmm. So at first they're doing, I believe, the Type 20 chronograph, and they're doing the CP2, the Chronometro Corelli. But in time, if all of these options get factored in and you really can make a one-off watch, what you're left with at the end of the day is one person's dream. It's like buying a hot rod. You may put $100,000 into a hot rod, and at the end of the day, sell the car for $20,000, because in the eyes of most, it's just a modified car.
But AMG wasn't always part of Mercedes. So AMG would modify a Mercedes, and then once they realized that many people wanted a tuned-up engine and changes to the car, Mercedes was like, wow, we have something here, let's bring them in-house, which is obviously what Zenith did. But it's no different in the next company that I want to talk about, where it's not so much a customizer, but is Hublot with small series collaboration. So obviously everybody knows, Hublot will do collaboration with the Dallas Cowboys. They do it with tattoo artists. Mm-hmm. They do it with soccer teams, sports teams. So these are, even though they're not one-offs or customized watches, they're small batch creations of 25 watches, 50 watches, 100 watches, whatever it is. And it shows you that there is a big market out there for these one-of-a-kind pieces, or not necessarily one-of-a-kind, but pieces that people can feel like it's a small gathering of collectors that are buying it. And, I'm not necessarily saying that it'll be the brand doing it, but I think that you're going to see many more customizers coming on and being that AMG that may even take a watch that you own and personalize it to you. And they say, okay, we're going to change the bezel, but the quality of the bezel is going to be the same as, if not better than, what the factory did. We're going to change the dial for you. We're going to inscribe the back. We're going to put on a sapphire crystal case back. We're going to change the strap. And as the pricing of that, gets less and less and less, it's not going to be that much more money to have, to have your own watch.
The thing about AMG, it's a really good example in terms of customization. Pre-acquisition AMG, I would say they were absolutely that. Post-acquisition AMG, after 2004, 2005, they were pretty much building standardized Mercedes. My main concern with this customization is that you're either building cars that are so individual, or not cars, watches that are so individual, I'm not sure they're going to appeal. They're going to have generalist appeal. And if you make it to the point, if you change it to the point where you're mass producing customs, I'm not sure it's quite the same thing. It's an interesting and untested world. The thing about Hublot's collaborations is you can clearly draw a line down the center between the ones that have been fantastically successful and the ones that have been huge bombs. And Hublot, to their credit, they're bold enough to try that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it works.
And you know what? Yeah. People buy them.
I mean, you could be Panerai Ferrari or you could be Hublot Ferrari. Same label, different brands, different implementation.
Those Panerai Ferraris are doing well now, by the way.
Well, I always predicted that those would recover.
They're coming back.
Those are coming back, guys. You want a Panerai perpetual calendar, you've only got one option. But the other thing is, just with Hublot, I'm not sure customization has been their thing so much as collaboration with Lapo Elkin and Italia Independent,
correct,
with Berluti, with Maxime Bouchy and Sang Bleu, like things like that.
But when you get down to it, if an organization or a company, or even if one of our watchers had a company and he wanted to order himself 10 of a Hublot,
sure,
and maybe Hublot doesn't offer him those the ability to just do 10 big banks, or he wouldn't have access, or she have access. But there was a customizer that would take the 10 that you purchased from an AD and now rework it for them at a price that makes sense, I think people will do that. And the reason why I think that is because I think now the brands themselves are incorporating what customizers were doing or are doing and bringing it into their own product. AP being one of those people, and we have a picture of it for people to see. But I think a big movement was the hand engraving of watches. I don't know if you've seen the pictures,
sure.
but you have people that are hand engraving Royal Oaks, Nautiluses, subs, really just beautiful creations. Now, obviously not cheap because they're all one of a kind hand engraved watches. But the brands themselves, once they see wow, there's a market for people that want one-off engraved Royal Oaks, we should do that. And then now AP goes and they've got an entire line of, and I don't know if they're hand engraved or laser engraved. I think they're laser engraved. But now they're doing what the one-off customizers were doing. So it's a really interesting concept because a lot of the one-offs and the people that are trying to be unique are now getting incorporated by the brands into their products.
I think, and I maintain that this is going to be a bigger deal for the customizers themselves. There have been some great brand collaborations during the 2000s. Kurt Schaffo did a fantastic engraved and skeletonized series for Zenith. Absolutely amazing watches. I feel though that if you expand customization past the point that it's artisanal to the point where it's mass production, then you're like post 2004 AMG versus like 1980s with the hammer and the truly customized cars. I think as long as it's low volume and truly exclusive, its main benefit for the brand is going to be the halo effect. Like AMG during the 80s gave a big halo association to Mercedes, even though Mercedes didn't own them back then. I think today, the mass production of AMGs means that for the most part, I know you can still do bespoke stuff, but for the most part, customization in AMG and personalization is gone. So at some point, the brands have to decide whether customization is going to be something that they mass produce or whether it's going to be the likes of hand engraving, enameling, miniature painting. Those are the kind of things that can never really be scaled.
Of course. So
the question is, which way does it go?
yeah, so time will tell.
I think it's exciting, though. Definitely a new development.
But, okay.
How's our feedback in the live chat, by the way?
You can take a look.
How are we doing? Okay. Okay, so guys, I see that you're sounding off in the chat, and we're joined by Sequan Gottlieb, longtime friend of the house, and I could see Joseph, Tyler, Noah, Kaizen, Budget Watch Guy, the General, Eddie Landsberg. Welcome, guys. I see a lot of our regulars in here. Okay, so we have a lot of interesting comments going both ways on the Zenith customizations. Guys, is the problem that Bamford is customizing the watches, or that the watches are blacked out, murdered out, traditional Bamford style? In other words, do you like the idea of being able to do custom and just dislike Bamford's particular style? Is that what's going on here? Because I think it's polarizing. I think that's worth mentioning. Bamford is a polarizing style.
Yeah, and I think that what's interesting is you can really tell that the customized pieces were probably from them. It wasn't like Zenith came up with the designs and said, here, this is what we want to do, and we want you to just put your name on it. You can really tell that this was a true collaboration, that they probably came up with a lot of the designs, and it speaks to the other watches that they've released in the past. The only thing that's annoying now on the Bamford page is all they post are the Zenith watches.
Yeah.
I had to unfollow them because of that. I couldn't take it anymore.
Here's my thought here with Zenith. Bamford, you guys are golden. This is great for you. George Bamford, you're the man. Zenith, you guys need iconic design. Trust me, your watches are great. Your movements are great. You don't need an El Primero 2, even though I'm sure something like it is coming. What you really need is a set of core iconic designs and promote the hell out of them. Because I can't tell you how many Tag Heuer and Hublot ads, promotions, special events, sponsored events I've seen, athletes who are associated with the brand, celebrities who wear the watch. We got a little bit on Floyd Mayweather coming up. He's going to be in Hublot trunks for the big fight. But the bottom line is Zenith, I don't think I've ever seen one of your ads. There was this thing with an old man and his grandson in Germany in the 90s. Yeah,
But that was the brand that we talked about, that just with a little bit of a marketing change, they've got the new worldwide CEO and the new U.S. CEO in that. With, I think, a little bit of love, you're going to see Zenith, come back.
And by a little marketing change, we mean actual advertising. Please, sound the alarm. Let the world know you exist. You've got Tag Heuer here and Hublot here. If you don't know how to promote yourself, ask either one of them. Trust me, they've got more than enough bombast to go around.
I was joking with them that they should, as a limited edition, that they should basically just recreate the Zenith Daytona and just take off Rolex and just put Zenith on there and just like advertise it as the original. Limited edition, 1,000 pieces. I think it would be bonkers.
Rolex, I'm telling you, the low-hanging fruit is a diving chronograph. You haven't done it, do it. That's basically what the Zenith DeLuca was. All right, what's up next? We got a great program.
Up next, okay. So watches that should be re-released. So these are watches that either the brand has discontinued or are sort of on the way out and haven't gotten any love in a long time, and watches that, I think that, maybe they, didn't, I mean, again, they should look at the numbers so they should know, but just watches that the American consumer loves and that could really revitalize the brand here in the States if given the right attention and the right direction, and, hopes for future releases. So starting off, Cartier Roadster. Let's see if the picture is there. So we should have a Roadster chrono popping up. But Cartier Roadster, I think it was the only sport watch that existed in the Cartier line for a long time. They came out with different sizes, the chrono, the non-chrono, the Roadster S, which was on a rubber strap, rubber bezel. And I really think it was one of the few watches that a lot of guys would gravitate towards for Cartier, and guys that maybe not necessarily would have purchased Cartier in the past, or wanted some of their other lines, but said, you know what, it's sporty, I like it, and maybe even have gotten that instead of a Rolex. And
yes.
And what's interesting is they got rid of the line, I think possibly because it didn't perform as well overseas, I'm not sure, but it's continued to do extremely well in the pre-owned market.
They go fast. They do not sit in inventory.
Yeah, I mean, we they come in, they go out. People still love the watch, and we get calls all the time still like, oh, do you have this Roadster? Do you have that Roadster? And I almost think like they didn't even tell people that it was leaving. So people still call and ask for them, and it's like, oh, they haven't had that watch for years. So that is a watch that I definitely think that the brand should bring back, and they should bring it back in a big way.
And here's what I think about it. He's absolutely right. The fact that people are asking about this watch, going on 7 years after it was discontinued, shows what a strong image it had, because people remember what it was called, what it looked like, why they wanted it.
And it's like a different shape. Like no other brand has really done that shape.
And that patented quick release bracelet system
Genius.
Lives on at IWC. It was great. People still ask about that because all you needed was a fingernail to go from a bracelet to a strap and back. Plus, the watch had a masculinity to it. It had the screws that held the bezel on were like Frenched taillights.
Yeah.
The dial of the watch was like a vintage speedometer. We've got a picture of it on tonight, but the best version had a lot of colorful tones.
So the one picture that I actually had of the I wore with a silver dial for years. I loved it, and it had like the nylon sail strap that came with it, the brown croc strap. So, I mean, they were even ahead of their time as far as the adjustability of the bracelet.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
But no, so I mean, again, I think that they could pretty much, I mean, they brought back the Panther, and it's pretty much exactly the same watch. Like, when you go to the show and you're walking by and, as you guys see when we start posting SIHH, when it comes up, and you go through the show, there's all like the vitrines of all the new releases, and I'm walking through the different vitrines, and I'm wondering like, okay, like I'm looking at the Panthers, and I'm wondering, oh, this is like a great tribute.
It was like a fraction of a millimeter larger.
I thought it was like, this is the history of the brand, and like, no, those are the new releases. And I was like, oh my God, it's the same watch. So they could pretty much just, release the same Roadster, and I think people would buy it.
Here's the thing about the Roadster too. It's so cool that it deserves to be brought back with some sort of pomp and circumstance. I would love to see it released in a limited series, coming with a strap and a bracelet in titanium.
A sick blue dial too.
Yes. Yes.
Sick blue dial. So if Cartier is watching, which I don't know if they are, but every blue moon we'll get an email from Richemont saying like, great video, that's what you guys should come out with.
Believe me, people ask about it. You've got a built-in audience. Consider yourself warned.
Moving on, next watch is a watch after your own heart, Jlc Master Compressor. So I know we've talked about Jaeger in the past, watches that Jaeger could put more energy into to revitalize the brand, at least here in the US. And Master Compressor line being one of them. It's the sportiest line they make. They still make a couple. I think they still make the Diver.
They still make the Master Compressor chronograph ceramic.
Correct.
Which is a nice little, gigantic 46mm sports watch.
But not cheap.
Not cheap. It's I believe it's available in ceramic and ceramic with gold, so they know their market. But the original Master Compressors were 41.5mm steel watches, and they were the first JLC true sports watches since, honestly, the early 1970s. People got into the brand specifically because of the look and feel of those watches, and I know I'm one of them. So one of the interesting things about Brian's revival proposals tonight is that he's talking about bringing back watches from the last 10 to 20 years. Not the 60s, not the 50s, although we've got some of those, but bring back watches that help to define the brands in the era of the luxury watch.
Correct. And I think with the JLC Master Compressor, you know, they're very expensive, and I think that what they really need to do is they need to put some marketing energy behind it. They need to revitalize the look of the watch and have it come out at an ultra competitive price point that people say, like, damn, great watch, great value for the money, super cool looking, and, you know, get it back on wrist, because that's the key. Once something gets on wrists, it spreads. But the key is getting it on those initial wrists and getting it on people that, you know, will spread it out amongst their friends, that it you know, tentacles out into the other lines.
JLC, if you're looking for an ambassador, I could suggest
Right
one.
here. Third watch, off the beaten track a little bit older, but the Breitling Top Time. So I talked about bringing the Prestige back last week. You know, I love sort of going down the rabbit hole of these older Breitlings, and I think that Breitling is prime for a relaunch. Like, the watches are beautiful, they've got amazing heritage behind them, and they've got such an arsenal of older watches that they could trip over and fall on super cool vintage-inspired pieces to come out with. So I think the Top Times were a little bit ahead of their time with the, you know, with having that sort of splash of bright color in the timepiece. They did them in both gold, stainless steel, different shapes, different cases, different dial combinations, and I think that there could be an entire relaunch Top Time line that's a little bit slimmer, a little bit lower profile. I think when they came out with the Transocean, they made him a little bit too bulky, a little bit too big, too much gold on the gold watches. You know, I don't want to, you know, tell them that they should, you know, have cases and shapes a little bit more like Jaeger, but they could do a slimmer profile. Nothing wrong with that, but a little bit of a slimmer profile piece that could help bring the price points down. And again, get them on people's wrists that want a vintage-inspired piece from a great brand at a great price. And now with the 01 movement, I mean, knockout.
Yeah, you're talking about a watch that was originally 35mm with like a Valjoux 7730 caliber inside. Make it a little bit bigger. You can even bring back the Valjoux. People will love it, and it'll be true to history.
How amazing is that?
That's a ton of fun. And you got a tritone that's anchored around black, silver, and orange. Do that again, I guarantee you there's a built-in market. Some of them are in this room.
Fourth and final piece, again, we talked about Zenith, so I figure tying them back in, the 10th of a second that came out, it was a limited edition of, what, 1,000 pieces?
Yeah, there were actually a couple of editions of the Striking 10th.
So this is the first, the Striking 10th, first edition.
Yeah, the 1969 commemorative dial with the Striking 10th complication. A really cool watch, a great way to reimagine the El Primero without going whole hog to an El Primero 2. It was a fantastic way to answer the most basic question people always ask about the El Primero. You've got a 1/10 of a second chronograph. How can you possibly read that? Because in the space of 1 second on the dial, you have 10 increments. Well, expand it so that you can read a second over a huge sweep, like a 6-second space on the dial.
So they did
it was spectacular to look at. That was the other thing.
And they did it in a limited edition of, I think it was 1,000 pieces. And it's a watch till today, people still are like, you know, can they come back out with it? Why do they not do more? So it should just be part of the normal collection. So this was a watch that I know that they put it in other watches and, you know, other lines of theirs, like the Stratus line, they did a 1/10 of a second, but I really think that they should just bring this exact watch back. And sorry to the people that have the first 1,000, but it would do very well.
Yeah, I think there was probably a way, guys, to extend an olive branch to those early adopters, because there are other iconic Zenith El Primero designs.
Just change the strap.
Yeah, pre-1975, there were plenty of interesting designs. You can put that movement in a different one. I think it is important to note that some of our users are making interesting suggestions. Clive is asking, Vulcain went bankrupt. I believe it was for sale, and I think it might have been purchased, but I don't think it went bankrupt. We also had a comment from one of our users regarding the Cartier, Steve Place. Steve had a great suggestion to go Laureato or Girard-Perregaux R&D01 and put the chronograph pushers on the thumb side of the watch, the left side. He said a mock-up of that on the Roadster case would be perfect, and that's not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea.
Thank you, Giants fan, for the exact number of those watches. 1969 is correct.
It was your A386 tribute.
I was close.
I
okay.
bite my tongue.
So moving on. So Tim, I believe you mentioned on last show a little bit about Bird Vaillet. Do you want to tell the audience here about the pieces and what exactly it is?
100%. First of all, Bird Vaillet is a fantastic studio that's been established to take basically obsolete watch and clock parts and give them new life. So I like to say Bird Vaillet is the studio where time stands still. So Albert and Edward, the founders of the company, wanted to find a way to keep all of these components relevant as art if they couldn't be used as machines. And so what you're actually looking at is a suspension of watch and clock parts, mainspring barrels, balances, screws, wheels, pivots, and staffs, suspended in handmade and hand-finished lucite sculpture. Now, they're based out of New York, so they've got a little bit of a hipster vibe going on, and I can tolerate that in their case because the product is just that cool. Now, we've got actually all of the models here at Govberg because we're big fans, so we're actually dealers, and I believe we are the first national dealer for Bird Vaillet.
We are. So it really came out of, I think it was a passion project of, the two founders.
Yes.
And it was one of those passion projects where they would make them using watch parts that were 50 to 100 years old. And they would clean all the parts, ultrasonic machine, polish them up, and put them into these, lucite creations. And then over time, watch lovers would look at them and be like, oh my God, where can I get that? That's amazing. And, and I guess from that sort of passion and that pet project grew out Bird Vaillet. So, my dad saw the line, absolutely loved it. He was like an early adopter and just buying them for himself. And, it really just developed into a great relationship. And now we're, able to offer them out to our customers.
I'm also happy to say that they make about, I want to say, 4 principal model lines, and I named 3 of them, so I feel pretty good about myself there. They're also made in limited series, and when they reach the limit of the series, they discontinue the shape. So in a very real sense, each one is a piece unique because of the suspension of the components, but more broadly, each series is also a limited series. This is about as much fun as you can have with the pieces of the watch minus the watch. And I can also say, no matter what brand you collect, this deserves a place in every watch collection.
And I'm pushing them to do a decanter. How cool would that be? For like wine or whiskey, it'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
I'd sign up for that.
Yeah.
Ooh, and that one has green parts in it.
Oh, wow.
So, Bird Vaillet, very cool, where time stands still, the back of your watch exploded in time. Sculptures in lucite, parts from every nook and cranny of Switzerland, Germany, and even in a few cases, Japan. I think I saw a reverse-threaded Seiko mainspring in there. All right, guys. So definitely give us a call. Any of our associates who can sell you a watch can sell you a sculpture through Bird Vaillet.
Definitely. And we can send you more photos or anything like that if you guys want to see. So final topic of the night, it looks like we are at the end of our show, is next Tuesday.
Yes.
We're going to be doing a new show called Watches Live, which is actually going to have myself and my dad on the show. Tim may or may not make a guest appearance, I'm not sure, but it's going to be a curated collection of pre-owned watches that we have available for sale, as well as a couple from our private collection that we just want to show off.
Yes.
But really watches that we have for sale that we think are good buys or good additions to the collection that may or may not already be posted on our website, but are coming through the track. That a lot of times these watches, we call customers that are looking for the watches beforehand, and they don't even make it to the website. So we're going to be bringing great watches to the show, and like with anything else, my dad's going to want to buy the love of the audience, so he's going to have plenty of swag to give out to people that watch. So if you're watching the show, please, it's going to be a fun time. We're going to be giving out swag from all different brands, and hopefully you guys enjoy it.
So to summarize, exclusive prices, live sales, free stuff. You can't beat that.
Thank you guys so much. I'm Brian. This is Tim. And thanks for logging on.